I'm looking forward to meeting them after we find an equitable deal that fits both of our needs.
Please do, yes, I'm there. Very good.
So with that said, I'd love to start off with hearing what your guys' potential definition for what daily fantasy sports will be.
As for daily fantasy sports, well, the definition that we have is we want it to be classified as a game of skill and knowledge. And I think we all kind of agree that we want to get this legalized. That we don't classify it as skill or knowledge base, we won't meet federal requirements. And there's no point in considering this conversation either. So, but what do you guys want? Like, what's Florida's perspective on daily fantasy sports?
Well, we also agree that it needs to be a game of skill. However, our definition is a work in progress because we want to find the best definition that fits your needs, but also fits our needs. So while we see that we know that you want to differentiate yourselves from a casino, but at the same time you're not a video game. So what, with that sort of dichotomy, what specifically would you like to see in terms of like an actual definition outside of the game of skill?
I would say preferably a contest of game or skill. I would prefer not to have the word game in it.
Mm-hmm.
I think that when it becomes a game of skill or knowledge, I think that then it widens the range of games that can be considered into this bill. And so we want to make it narrow for us, for personal reasons, but also for Florida's benefit to not open up the floodgates for all types of games to come in.
Mm-hmm.
So we do want to preferably identify it or define it as a contest of skill and knowledge base.
Yes. And we know that in previous bills that have shown for the state that they've used the term amusement. Mm-hmm. That's something that we would not like that term in there. Right? We would think it will create a slippery slope of it possibly leading over to gambling. Mm-hmm. We don't want that happening at all. So we think just really classify it as skill and knowledge based. Right. And I think we'd be there on the safe side of that.
Mm-hmm. And I think we have the same viewpoint on that. We're definitely wanting it to be classified as a game skill. And, we're on the same basis where we understand that you do not want it to be considered like an amusement because people are going to consider amusement more like games, video games, things like that. And it's going to also want kids involved with it, which we're also looking to, avoid as well.
Yes.
So are we okay then saying that it's a contest of skill instead of a game?
Yeah, the language that I am pulling from is from New York, and our preferred language is interactive fantasy sports contest. And then in the definition itself says shall mean a game of skill wherein one or more contestants compete against each other by using their knowledge and understanding of athletic events and of athletes to select and manage rosters of simulated players whose performance directly corresponds with the actual performance of human competitors on sports teams and in sports events. Does that difference?
If we just substitute game for contest, is perfect.
Yes, I agree. Do you agree? Okay. So
yeah, so we just completely eliminate game.
Would you? I hate to ask, but does somebody mind keeping track of the definitions that we agree to? So I'm going to give James and I happen to have a copy of each document. Or is yours marked up on mine? Okay, so let's actually she needs to be anything. It's section 8.
New York, sorry.
Yeah.
Can I keep this?
Yeah. Yes. So the next thing that I think we would like to discuss is what kind of players authorized. So if you go to subsection 1, Shanice, it talks about an authorized player shall mean any individual located in If you substitute New York for Florida, state who is not a prohibited player and that participates in an interactive fantasy sports contest offered by a registrant.
You said subsection 1?
No, so if you turn back onto the page that we just on with section 8,
Okay.
just go up to, it says 2, 3, S, 1401, line 21 actually.
21. Authorized player?
Yes.
Okay.
Just putting it up here too, so I can find it online. So which line was it?
Line number 21,
What page?
page number 2.
Page 2, line 21. Okay, it's not that page. Okay. So I definitely agree with that.
Mhm.
I think we should also add an age restriction there, that the player has to be at least 18 years of age. So it has to be an adult.
So in the New York statute on page number 3, line 19, it says a minor shall mean any person under the age of 18 years.
Yes.
And then line 20, a prohibited player shall mean any member, officer, employee, or agent, or an operator of registrant. And then it sort of goes into different definitions, but in that definition, you can definitely insert the restriction.
Mm-hmm.
Any person who is not at the age of 18 shall not be able to participate.
Yes.
Well, we can put any minors, since
Any
minors
minor, yeah.
defined.
It's already in there, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I like that, yeah. So I really like New York's bill. It's actually one of those we just recently passed it with them. So
So do we have agreement that we kind of want to model our bill after New York, how New York sort of did it?
slightly, yes. Definitely when it comes to those definitions, the restrictions, I'm all for it. So is there anything else on Florida's side that it wants to include in regards to definitions or restrictions or expectations?
So we're also interested in their definition of a highly experienced player, just to differentiate between your novice players as well.
Mm-hmm. Well, we actually have different categories when it comes to actual competition. So we have one that are specifically for novices, ones for experts, and et cetera, et cetera. So we do have that categorized for within our competitions.
And what kind of definition are you using for those?
Well, for a novice, is someone who really never played the game before.
Right.
So they're kind of getting firsthand experience, but they still have to do their research because it's still strictly research, knowledge and skill based. So then to the experts is more someone who does play on a regular basis. You know, if you want, we can include what a regular basis means. Does that mean 10 games and more, or someone who's been playing for a year or more? So I mean, we could definitely talk something out in regards to that of what is an expert. Okay. So we're open to that for sure.
I think my hesitancy with the novice piece is that it may not pass because then it kind of goes into that sort of game of chance where if this person gets lucky, then anybody could do it.
Mm-hmm.
So to me, it's opening up a door that we don't need to go down,
Mm-hmm.
and I would rather find a different word than novice and maybe go with like experienced player or
Mm-hmm.
highly skilled player or expert or whatever, but stay away from novice.
So you're saying just preferably one category opposed to a level of categories, or?
I'm okay. Well, I mean, can I consult with my partner?
Okay, so we are fine having like just one specific category that defines what a more experienced player would be, because anything that isn't an experienced player obviously is going to fall in that other category,
Yes.
and we can avoid using that term novice.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So it's more
So-
of a broad definition.
Of just, so so you're saying that the earnings ought to be based on an experienced player. Someone can always get lucky, right? That's always the case with anything in life, right? Anyone can get lucky. So you're saying you just want one category as generally, this is a game for an experienced player?
Mm-hmm.
Is that the
So I think they don't even
clarification?
want any type of category.
You're just
You
saying-
want to be categorized, just saying it has to be for, you just need that skill.
I think we can have one broad category, but restrict some of the language. But I'm in agreement with my partner that we need to have a broader category just to stay away from
Just one
Just one
category.
category.
one category.
So
Everyone
then should we
can
even include the definition of what an expert is then?
Yeah.
Because if
I
we,
would eliminate that altogether.
yeah, if we just eliminate that, it just keep the door closed for any type of, ambiguity there.
Yeah.
Do you guys have language that we can look at in terms of this definition?
I would exclude period
Mm-hmm.
any player specifically. That's why
You
it's
can
getting
define an
sense.
expert, then
Right.
perception. I mean, someone could perceive an expert to be someone who has years of experience. Someone could think of someone who's only done it once. If you play it once and make it one, you could be an expert then.
Because if we're not going to differentiate between levels, then it ought to just be a player.
Yes.
And given that your outcome should be based on knowledge and skill, we can't account for the 1 off or 2 off that get lucky and maybe big. If there's something specific that you guys want us to include, you can introduce that. And we can just
So, I guess what our concern is that we're more worried in that we're wanting in like that higher level, highly experienced player type language in there possibly, just to kind of differentiate in a way between, and someone who might be a casual player or something like that.
Right.
And I guess in a way you kind of defined it in a way to have a category for them maybe. And I think we're basically kind of open to that.
Yeah.
And we're thinking about more of a definition for it, kind of similar to what we have on page 2 in that document we shared with you, about approximately line 39, where it's going to be someone who's going to have played profusely, basically.
highly experienced player, is that what you're referring to? So the concern is, my concern is with that specifically is that, then again, New York has decided to be specific, right, extremely specific as to how many times someone has played to determine what level of expertise they are. And the only issue with that may be is then are we prepared then to eliminate the ones that may be novice or people that are not. I mean, this says, I mean, a player who has entered more than 1,000 contests.
So
Like, are we prepared to say?
Because how would you enforce that even in Florida? I mean, if we're just now legalizing it there, technically no one's legally played in Florida, so
Right.
so they couldn't even play in that if you were to do that.
No one would start off, right, as being this
So it
experienced.
has to be someone who played in a state where it was legalized and they played 1,000 times, and then they moved to Florida and they could play.
So, I guess,
Or is your purpose to eliminate certain people from playing? I guess that's my question. Really.
Yeah, because my fear is that when we're categorizing it too much, my fear is discrimination. Like, just because someone's played a little bit more, you're discriminating against someone else who hasn't played as much. Why not play, even if they have this skill and knowledge. I mean, we have sports analysis and whoever who do have that knowledge of who will perform based on their statistics. But
In this specific bill that you included also is more. It's not specifically to only fantasy sports. This is to horse racing and things like that.
Yes.
So
We recognize
Yeah.
that, but of course, we're picking out the relevant
Right.
definitions that
Right.
apply to our
Mhm.
bill.
Mhm.
So please ignore the
Oh,
most
sure.
recent piece.
Sure.
I mean, we hear your concerns. However, it goes back to that novice piece
Mhm.
that we don't want to fall into games of chance.
Right.
So from where we're coming from, I think we're open to tiers.
Okay.
We're not open to the word novice. So maybe a way around it could be somebody who is a budding player. Something of that sort is someone who has played 100 games. Something that is generated, that has defined enough of an interest that it shows that they're interested, but not enough of an interest to show mastery.
Right.
I mean, if you want to introduce tiers rather than using the word novice or expert or etc., then how would you define tier 1, tier 2, tier 3? Because you have to define them in the bill as well.
Well, I think our best approach, I think the best approach is to maybe delineating then, for instance, if we're looking at this as an example, maybe your highest tier is someone who has played X amount of games.
Yeah.
And then we'll just tier it off lower and lower.
Okay, so from what I'm understanding is, when we initiate this whole process, it gets legalized and the bill passes, people who start playing, they can only start at tier 1. They have to win so many games, they can move to tier 2 and then to tier 3. So basically, when we first initiate the game, tier 2, 3, 4, etc., what do you need a bill to be at? Until the elements of tier 1 have been satisfied.
Right.
So is that what you're proposing? Okay. So would there also be a difference in prize payout, entry fees in regards to the tiers? I mean, we want to encourage people to, still participate in it. If there's no difference, there's no point in doing the tiers.
Right, and then that's why my question was, are we prepared to exclude certain people? Are certain people not eligible for payouts until they have reached a certain level of mastery? I just want to make sure that there's a reason behind these categories,
Yes.
so that we can articulate the appropriate way.
And I think we would agree to having various entry fees and payouts depending on the tiers. And of course, this gives incentive, to keep these people playing because they'll slowly rise in these tiers as well for you guys.
So what would be the requirements then to progress to the next tier? What would you guys propose there? And how many tiers?
So what we're thinking of is possibly starting a tier system where, the highest tier, we're looking at prizes of approximately, let's say, 1,000. And our lowest one is 250. So it's a progressive right, 250, 500, 1,000, and so forth.
So the lowest tier would be a payout of 250?
Yeah. Yes. So in the New York language, it says one more than 3 prizes valued at. Substitute 1,000 instead of 1,000 and say 250. So that's the lowest tier. That's tier 1.
Okay. So then tier 2, from what I'm understanding, you're just saying that they have to win 4 games to move up to tier 2.
Yeah.
Okay, then what about the tier 3? So what's the highest number of tiers you want?
Because they haven't highly experienced as being 1,000, winning 1,000.
Yes. Well, they have 1,000 games or when more than 3 prizes valued at $1,000 each, or more than a single operator are registered. So that means they have to So you said the highest payout will be 1,000, so that'll be the highest tier, so are we looking at tier 4? If we're doing quarters,
I think it's 3, because then
so we're looking at 250 for tier 1, and then 5 for
500
tier 2, and then 1,000 for tier 3.
Yeah. So sort of making that, using that language of highly experienced player, tier 3, I've won 3 or more, one more than 3 prizes.
So it would have to be 3 prizes.
And then the question is, then what is the entry fee?
Yeah.
I mean, if you want to have set prizes, then we need to have set entry fees.
Yes.
What would you guys like to have as an entry fee?
I mean, the entry fees, they can vary, from $1 to $1,000. I mean, if someone's paying $1,000 for entry fee, only getting paid out $250, they're making a negative there.
Because we're starting from the bare bones with Florida, so even with the season long fantasy is, it's not here yet either, so that can vary.
What's the industry standard for entry fees?
It varies.
Yeah.
I mean, even other
Some states have
competitors,
$100, I think.
Yeah.
So given our sort of system that we've been chatting about, what do you think is the most fair entry fee?
So,
I mean, it depends on the pay.
it really just depends. You have people
Yeah.
just have, they just pay less. They just only pay $1 or pay $5 as an entry fee. Then you have others who pay $100, if they can afford that.
Right, and if you pay $100, you're gonna assume or expect about
$1,000 payout.
$1,000 payout.
So I mean, we are definitely, I believe, we're open to a tier system, definitely. But I think when it comes to the definition of a highly experienced player, I think we should eliminate the amount of money that has been won. I mean, we have our ITs and they can build a system in our software to where, based on the IP numbers or whatever, their identification or social, whatever, they have to won 3 games at least to move to the next tier. So that way we can eliminate the payout amount rather than just focus on the winning results. Just like I said, by entering a certain payout, it would reduce profits.
Yeah. And I think that given the income levels and cost of living and et cetera that you have in New York versus what you have in Florida, I think that should be considered as well.
Definitely.
And we just don't want to eliminate a certain class of individuals from playing.
Yes.
I think it'll reduce both, the benefit to you
So
and
like I
us as
said,
well.
because it's a new system in Florida, the tier system, like I said, we're fully open to it. Like, I just eliminate the payout amount or how much money is required to win in order to move up. Just focus more on the winning itself.
Okay.
And I agree that it does contribute to ensuring that a more skilled player does get the higher payout. So I understand the purpose of the tier system. I just want to make sure that we're clear on what the entry fees should be and make sure that it's relative to what the payouts are.
But I think the I hear where you guys are coming from. However, I think we also have to incentivize people to want to play daily fantasy sports.
Yes, and that's my thing though. If you're only paying out $250 for a tier
$100
1,
entry fee, it's not going to be.
it's not worth it for them.
What if we said instead of, I'm sorry to cut you off.
No, fine.
What if we said like $25 for $250?
That would be more.
And then if it's
that would be more of a draw for sure.
and then if it's 500, then we say 100 or 50.
For 100, it should be 1,000 payout.
I agree.
Yes, but my thing is, should we really include all those specific numbers into the bill? So I mean, we could create then a 30-page bill just based off the numbers.
That's true. However,
if they can do that, but we can.
Given
we can work with those numbers.
Given legislation and how sort of it works, a lot of the time it's better to be more specific, and then if we have to go in and change things, then we do so later. But to sort of leave the door open without definitions gives people.
Because my question is that if we just only include those payout fees or the payout winnings, could we also then still pay out higher than what's in the bill itself? Or do we need to include into the building, okay, it's not limited to these payouts, but in order to get to the highest tier, you have to want at least so much.
So
Maybe
maybe,
we do this or something,
Mm-hmm.
or maybe 50, and then 100, and then 1,000.
Okay.
You know what I mean? So if we could do 50 instead of that one, we could do 500, and then it'll be 10% of what you put in. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And then do that. We do that,
Okay.
and then we can obviously not finalize today, but we can work in those. So it's based on your entry fee.
Mm-hmm.
Your tier determines your entry fee less your payout.
Yeah.
We can work on that.
and I think, I apologize, there's one other thing I wanted to add to your statement. Oh, what you had said about, we can maybe put in some language about if, the tiers in this system, this is not like, I'm writing the language as we're going, but the tiers in this system is limited to what tier you are at, but at tier 3, then it's
payout.
open payout
Okay.
to however much you.
Yes, because I think we need to include that, otherwise, I just fear that they're going to restrict us and saying, hey, you guys cannot pay out any more than $1,000.
Right.
That's just my fear.
And so my question is, do we have agreement on this tiered system?
Okay, and just order the classifying based on what an expert is.
Yeah.
Okay, so this only for the purpose of classifying or identifying what an expert is.
So tier 1 expert, a tier 2 expert, a tier 3 expert, or however you want to define it.
For tier 1, we don't want them to be novice, right? But we want them to be
A budding player.
okay.
I'm just.
We can work on that. We have,
We just identify as a tier 1 player, tier 2 player, tier 3 player, and that's it.
on
We
the
use the
maybe a
word
minimum
expert.
amount of games per tier.
Yes.
That's fair.
Okay.
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 And then in addition to that, since we did speak about entry fees, we would like entry fees to be defined as it shall mean cash or cash equivalent that is paid by an authorized player to an operator or registrant to participate in an interactive fantasy sport contest offered by such an operator or registrant.
Okay, what line is that?
That is page 2,
So that's just defining
line
what
29.
an entry fee is.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Line, sorry.
Yeah.
Line 29, page 2.
Yeah.
You okay with that?
So we're all in agreement on that?
Yeah, but let's make sure that.
So what's the next step for you guys that you're interested in defining? Is there any other terms that you would like at this point?
So, I mean, what we mainly cared about really just having it being classified as skill and knowledge based. That's really one of the biggest things we cared about.
As far
And
as
then limiting,
defining.
that's defining it. I mean, the other definitions, defining entry fee, et cetera, we're totally okay
We'll
with
work
what's
on
in.
the tier players.
Yes, yeah, that's totally fine.
Okay.
So, okay.
How do you guys feel about moving on to another topic involved in this?
Yeah.
So we're kind of curious what your stances are going to be on how you want to advertise your company and state and everything, and if there's any hopes or desires you're looking for.
Our main thing is that we, obviously our preference is unlimited advertising, right? As much advertising as can be. But our main thing is that we do not want to, we don't want any limitations on having a disclaimer that it be gambling or anything of that nature. So, because it's not gambling, it's skill-based, knowledge-based, we want to make sure that is clear.
Yes.
We're okay with maybe including some other language, but not language that alludes to it being gambling.
Yes.
And again, preferably that it be unlimited.
preferably, I would like no disclaimer at all.
Mhm.
So that's just adding to the advertisement fee and the duration of the advertisement.
Mhm.
I mean, so we would like unlimited advertising, because
Yeah.
advertising is what brings in a profit, brings in profit for
For
us,
you
brings in
and
profit
for
for the
us.
state.
Yeah.
So it works both ways.
Right.
So we share in that sentiment that it does bring profit for both of us.
Mhm.
Our concern is that we don't want it to seem that the state is endorsing that you guys to just go ahead and run basically the gamut on this. And our other concern is that we would like possibly something like some type of disclaimer. We can talk about it, being something besides specifically, in terms of calling it gambling,
Mhm.
but some type of disclaimer so that we can kind of protect our citizens, in case that, we are.
So, question then, so what did you guys have in mind in regards to our advertising? Because you said you don't want it to just be, you don't want to be bombarded with advertising.
Well, essentially, I'm sorry to cut you off. Please
Okay,
finish.
Sorry, just before you, I want to make sure that the amount of advertising is not a question, it's just about the language. The
Yes,
disclaimer.
we're concerned about the language.
Okay.
We don't want it to seem like we're endorsing you, basically.
And we're
You're not
also,
endorsing a game of skill and knowledge.
well, we're also, clever. We are also concerned about the amount as well. And the reason being is that it does go to what my partner said, that we don't want to seem that we're endorsing.
Mhm.
So it's a fine line between daily fantasy sports and gambling, and while we recognize that we don't want to step on the toes of what gambling is considered as, because that's not what we're trying to do here.
Mhm.
At the same time, we don't want to, we're also trying not to promote to the younger generations daily fantasy sports, because we had just agreed that minors, anybody under the age of 18, we don't want them participating in.
Yes.
So with that said, we have to sort of keep in mind that during certain times, during certain days, children aren't home watching TV, and we don't want them sort of getting that message that they're allowed to play something that clearly they're restricted from.
Mhm. I mean, I don't know that we can control 100%, what kids
Yeah.
see. There's a ton of things. Kids see a lot of things they probably shouldn't see. Now you have Netflix and
Yes,
chill.
exactly.
It's hard to determine or control what kids do see. So I don't know that will be accomplished regardless of how much we advertise or not. But I think this specifically, I want to be clear, and then we also want to give the message out in general that this is not a game, this is not gambling, it's not just throwing your money and just hoping that something happens, and it does require skill, and it does require knowledge in order for you to have any return. So that is what our primary focus is here.
So
distinguishing that.
Yeah, and what I'd like to add to that is, Florida's concerned with it being looked at as endorsing, daily fantasy sports. We're going to include a disclaimer that states Florida is not associated with this, or we are not endorsed by Florida. We would prefer that over using language that indicates gambling.
Okay. Well, towards your whole worry about, trying to control the amount and everything, how do you feel about maybe putting some sort of limitation about our in-state broadcasting? You can broadcast nationally all you want. We'll try to not doing that. But the amount of in-state broadcasting, maybe associate it with certain times of the day that, not maybe right after school when kids are arriving home, or possibly.
So what we're offering is prime time. You guys would be able to advertise from 7 p.m. to about 11 o'clock p.m.
Well, this is the East Coast, so you got to consider you have West Coast games that are earlier in the day. That's the real issue is because the East Coast, what prime time is relative.
That's true, but we're saying specific to Florida, because while we recognize it is the East Coast, we also want to keep in mind that we do need to keep our citizens at night. So because of our constituency and sort of our concerns with minors, I think the reason why we're proposing 7 p.m. is that most kids at around that time, 7 to 8 p.m., go to sleep. At that point, you know, if somebody's older, then we can sort of, there's language here that discusses each registrant shall publicly facilitate a parental control procedure to allow parents and minors, to exclude minors from accessing any contest or platform, and it shall include a toll-free number to call for help in establishing such parental controls.
So, what do we propose that we get unlimited advertising during all games on game days? So if this, for instance, Sunday, games start at 10 a.m. in the morning with football, for instance, so we can advertise starting 10 a.m. on Sundays. There's a game Thursdays, if it starts, say, for instance, 2 p.m., then we can advertise during the games. In addition to where you guys said that you don't want us to advertise when kids get home immediately, could we get free advertising then prior to them getting home? So they start school, let's say 7 o'clock until 2 p.m., then we get from 7 a.m. to 2 p.m.
On non-game days.
So
So game
non-game
days will
days.
be unlimited, no
Yes.
holds barred, right?
So
That's your Thursdays, your
essentially,
Sundays, your
essentially what you're negotiating is for the All My Children network.
No, on non-game days, it will be restricted to these non-child frequenting times.
Yes.
So the price was right.
Well,
So what if we include that? We don't advertise on certain children networks. For instance, Nickelodeon, Cartoon Network. I mean, a lot of kids don't really watch, they don't watch Fox Sports, ESPN,
I mean,
etc.
but there are some precocious children out there that
There are, but I'd say, I don't want to make any assumptions here, but
and
the vast
you know,
majority, they watch Nickelodeon, Cartoon Network, or
I would say that's a
Netflix.
stretch, sir. Because if you're saying that, then you know a lot of kids are into football. You have like youth sports that have kids with the Miami Dolphins, for instance, are in Florida.
Mhm.
So if you're making the argument that you should stay off of particular networks, well, what about on the days that these kids watch, you know, with their parents, and then they start seeing this advertising?
I mean,
How
that's
do you
on a
counteract
game
that?
day.
How do you
Yeah.
counteract
We're arguing on game days.
Yes.
We definitely need to,
Yes.
those need to be the days that we
Yes,
get to advertise.
especially because people, that's when they follow.
Right, and that's
they
what
follow
matters.
the players during the games.
Again, the less amount of advertising means less, you know,
Yes.
profit for education programs, things like that.
Yes.
You know, so it's not beneficial either way. So game days really need to kind of be unrestricted. But I agree with the non-game days and things like that to not advertise when kids are around. I agree with that.
Can we take a minute to consult? Sure. Thank you. Can we exit the room?
Sure.
Quick?
And they hold us to advertise on it. Yeah, that's not even- Imagine that they got 11 professional sports teams. So those games go
And
on
the
all the
gators
time.
are arguably bigger than any other sports game.
Yes.
You know, especially now that, well, I guess the Heat now have way back.
We need to let it advertise.
Yeah.
Definitely during games, on game days.
I mean, we want to make it lucrative for them too, you know.
Yeah, I mean, I get the whole point with not advertising when kids get home.
Yeah.
I get that. But why not advertise when their kids are not home?
Mhm.
I mean, that's their fear. I mean, if they want to kind of keep it to, you know, from advertise 8 to 12.
Yeah, because first take, and then you can't not advertise during those times. You know what I mean? That's not reason.
Yeah. I'd also say, like, you know, ESPN, they should give us all day.
No.
ESPN.
It has to be.
Yeah. So ESPN, Sundays, definitely all day.
Yeah. Yeah, like I said, Thursdays a good day.
Mhm. Mondays.
Mondays. Game days.
And that sounds very good business.
Football is probably the highest, you know,
Well, I mean, especially with us, like DraftKings will partner with 25 baseball teams.
Yeah. I was
So
gonna say baseball, you know.
that's a big one. So in baseball, that's a long season. We're talking what, 9 months?
Yeah.
And they got games every day.
And that part is to try to get people to watch baseball. I like baseball though. I like it.
I tried watching it, but it's supposed to be a 9-inning game and it ends up being 20.
Yeah.
Yeah, no.
My son plays baseball. He's like bored out in the outfield. Like, what's going on?
No, that's all he wants to play this year.
It's fun.
Thank you so much.
So, me and my colleague were discussing, we understand that obviously, on those game days, you're gonna want that advertisement out there. And we understand that you probably don't want those time restrictions and everything on those days. We are thinking that, how do you feel if we allow you these, game days, at which point you could possibly run, you can possibly run throughout the day, but we have a limitation as to how many total there are going to be on that day. So that gives you more hours to work with, but a restriction on how many.
How many are we talking about?
Yeah, because it depends, right? You have some game days where you have games all Sunday, and you have some game days where maybe 1 or 2 games. You know what I mean? So it's, what do you think?
What? Okay.
What do you think?
I personally think it should be unlimited, just because it varies on day. I mean, it's playoffs. You know what I mean? It's just so many variables. It would be hard to just pick one specific number.
But if we don't limit it, then you guys will either have an opportunity to buy up all the airtime. So, I mean, this is a ridiculous idea, but it's hypothetically speaking, because you guys are a live and world company, you could hypothetically buy all the time, daily fantasy sports, 24/7 advertising. And to us, that doesn't help our purposes, because then it starts to fall again back into that idea of we don't want to be endorsing you guys. So what we're saying, to reiterate what James said, is we're interested in giving you guys game day, that you're able to advertise on game day. But the amount of times that you're able to advertise is what we're wanting to restrict.
So you're saying like once every commercial break, is that acceptable? Or
Well, how many commercial breaks are there?
well, see, because this is the thing, we live in the world we live in today, right? Some people stream, so it's not. That's what I'm saying. Is like putting a number on it is really difficult, because if you stream instead of just watching on your local network, the commercial breaks are different.
So
You can choose. You can pick and choose how long you want your commercial to be. But you know what I mean? It's things are moving forward.
We're also concerned about like she was saying, if you bought up all that time, you're inundating, all that time with daily fantasy sports. Your consumers are also going to be kind of annoyed by this at the same time. So we also are concerned about protecting your interests in this as well.
So,
Well, do you have a number amount? I can't think of one on the top of my head to just throw out, because it's
Because
so
commercials,
varied.
they depend on
Yeah.
injury. If there's an injury, there's a commercial then or whatever. So
You
it's
have your
ridiculous
refs,
amount.
so we're thinking more like 2 times a
To
game.
Two times a
are
game?
typically 3 to 4 hours long. Baseball games can be even longer than that.
No,
Yeah,
I'm saying
baseball.
the entire day. 2
Oh.
times.
No. Sorry, no.
Well, give us a number.
Well, we've had negotiations with California, and they gave us unlimited range of advertising.
Yeah, we recognize that, but again, we're in Florida, so what they do in California doesn't necessarily apply to what we do.
I mean, it's a little bit relative, given that they have a close to a amount of number of sports teams that you do,
Yes.
right? I can assure you, we will not buy up all the commercials.
Of course,
We
it's
wish we
expensive.
could.
That's expensive. You know, we don't want to spend
There
all
are
our
companies
profit.
that, that lucrative, but,
So what if we limit our advertisement time rather than it being, let's say 30 to 40 seconds, we'll reduce it to, say, 20 seconds
yeah,
or something like that, 15 seconds.
But how many times would you advertise per hour?
Well, it depends on the commercial.
right.
I mean,
You guys
have
watch
others,
sports?
yeah.
I hope you guys watch sports. You don't watch sports?
Well, we watch sports, but
I mean,
I would
say-
like to stick to the
so-
relevancy.
Say for instance,
No,
when you
because
watch a game, for
I
instance,
think it is relevant, I promise, because then you would understand the limitation when it comes to the number of advertisements given the amount of commercial breaks and etc. If you
Yes.
have kind of context to put it in.
Yeah.
That was
So,
it.
I have a
Yeah.
question though. It's like, what car do you drive? You got Toyota, Honda, Subaru, what about you?
Future.
Okay, so every commercial you'll see, usually a Dodge or Chevy commercial, every game, after every commercial break. Do you get annoyed by those?
Yes. Do you
So-
want to buy those things? No.
You don't want to buy a Dodge even though you know they have bad transmission. You certainly want to buy a Dodge. You certainly want to buy a Dodge.
So my point is though that they advertise every commercial break too, and
Mhm.
typically people don't think, and I don't think about, oh, there's another Dodge commercial, or
Right.
oh, there's another Chevy commercial,
But it
or,
doesn't-
oh, there's another
Kia
Dorito commercial.
K900 commercials have you seen with LeBron? When you
Yes.
know he's not driving that vehicle.
Yes.
See what I'm saying? But you like those K900s are nice.
But you recognize that like it's not based in reality, and that's the problem that I'm having with those commercials, because it repeats over and over and over again, but it doesn't necessarily induce buying, because you get to a point of saturation even with those commercials that people don't want to go out and buy X vehicle. It's the same thing.
Kind of to the contrary, but I get what you're saying from your perspective. But studies
But-
show that when you see a McDonald's commercial, it makes you want to go buy a burger you never ate.
But
You know what I
you're
mean?
you're
Yeah.
also talking about a small purchase versus a large purchase
Mhm.
with a Dodge vehicle. So
Mhm.
it's something that people actually have to put in time and effort and
Right.
energy to researching and thinking about. Whereas a McDonald's commercial is a small item
Right.
that if you repeat it over and over, it of course will make somebody want to go buy it because
Right.
the risk isn't as big.
Mhm.
So with daily fantasy sports, I'm not likening it to a McDonald's sandwich because you guys are better than that.
Yeah.
But you're also not a Dodge car.
Are we not?
Yeah.
Well,
Because
we have
you
better
don't-
transmissions. I would.
Yeah.
So what I'm saying is we want to put you somewhere in the middle of, McDonald's, we're loving it, and Dodge commercial,
Right.
beep beep vroom, you got a new car.
Dodgers horns don't sound like that. I get where you're coming from.
So that's why I'm saying, like, okay, I know 2 is a ridiculous number.
Mhm.
I think maybe 5 times
A day.
throughout a day. But instead of giving you 15 seconds, we'll give you 45 seconds,
That's too long. We only need 45 seconds.
30. 5 commercials throughout the day, 30 seconds, go.
Because if you have 5 games that day, which in reality would probably be about 3 or 4.
So I'm looking at the requirements for instance, you're now the National Football League, and they are required to play 20 commercial breaks per game. So rather than us advertising every single commercial break, we'll limit to 5 advertisements per break. I mean, not per break,
Per game.
Per game.
Okay.
So 5
So
per
then,
game.
yeah,
So
so
if there's
there's-
1 game a day, then
Yes.
it'd be 5
Per that game.
per that game.
Yeah, because right here it says that they're required to play 20 commercial breaks per game. So rather than us using that every 20 break for advertising, we'll limit it to just 5 commercial breaks.
Okay. So with that said, I think we have to actually restrict it by the game and the number of commercials per game instead of instead of doing it how I'm trying to explain it.
No, we can do 5 advertisements per game, given that we understand with football specifically is 20, right?
Yes.
Basketball probably is not that high, I can't imagine.
Probably less.
Wait,
But it may be around about that amount. But if we just set the general amount as 5 per game, and then that's consistent number.
so it's 5 per game,
Mhm.
then that means that.
Same thing. Yeah, same
Okay.
thing, 20 breaks.
Yeah.
So then that means how many, if we have 4 football games, then you'd have 20 advertisements.
Per day, yeah.
Which is only a fourth of what individual is
Yes,
saying.
and we're saying, how long is the advertisement? 20 seconds.
20 seconds.
So that's,
I like 15.
I mean,
If we're gonna give you 5 per game, then you guys get 15 seconds.
that's
Well-
25% though of what people are saying. So they're gonna want to buy Dodge cars and play daily fantasy sports. See what I'm saying?
Again,
There's competition here.
so we're willing to break it. We went from unlimited to 5 per game now.
And if you have one, if you have one game, because there are some days we just have one game, one major baseball game, that's only 5 advertisements for like a 6-hour game maybe.
Yes, and there's some days where there's no games at all, so
Yeah.
we won't be advertising at all then.
Mm-hmm.
How do you feel about maybe like what she was saying with 15 seconds, but it can be extended a little bit more if there are fewer games?
so
if there's more than one game, or if there's more than 3 games, it'll be 15 seconds. If there's only one game, then it'll be 20 seconds.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So one game, 20. More than 3, 15 seconds.
yes, and then the total restriction is you guys get 5 advertisements
Per game,
per game.
yes.
Max.
So, max.
Max.
And are we good with these not appearing on any like kid networks, right?
Yes,
So now,
yes.
specifically, this is one, so we're talking about games here, not the amount of advertising. So if
Yeah.
there's one game a day is 20 seconds, more than 3 games is 15 seconds.
Yeah.
So
5
20 seconds per advertisement.
Right.
So yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mhm.
And then, so we're doing no kid networks, but when it comes to our social media, our online websites, we don't want that touch at all. That leaves us free range.
Free range for specifically like
Online.
ESPN.
No, I'm talking about online, so our websites.
Oh yeah, online as
Our
well.
websites, yeah.
Well, you guys need to put in the disclaimer that daily, either daily fantasy sports, there needs to be a message to like talk about addiction, or we don't want people like sort of promoting the fact that we don't want.
Well,
Gambling.
Well, online is international.
Yeah, but I mean, you're talking about disclaimer, they're talking about addiction, they're going back to the gambling.
Right.
And so we're saying from the beginning, this is not a gambling
Playing a
activity.
game that requires skill
Yes.
and knowledge is not
Yes.
addicting if you suck at it.
Yes, and like,
It
if you don't-
should be.
and if you don't want to be associated or feel like you're endorsing us, I mean, we'll include
Mhm.
something that says we are not endorsed by Florida.
Well,
Just say that for-
I also feel like it needs to be, we're not endorsed by Florida, and gambling is bad, don't do
Yeah,
it.
but
we're
we're
not
not gambling
gambling.
though.
We recognize that, but what I'm saying is there needs to be, you need to make it obvious to the average consumer that what you're doing isn't gambling, because, Johnny,
Yeah, we can put this is not gambling. Hey, that's what do you mean?
I think what we're trying to say is that, okay, so addiction, we're saying like some type of message dealing with addiction. We're not necessarily saying dealing with gambling, because games themselves can be addictive.
Yeah, but you don't see Monopoly with a disclaimer that says it's addictive. I
Yes,
don't see
but-
Starbucks with addictive, but
Right?
it should-
I know, that
should-
should be on there.
should be on there.
Yes, but with Monopoly, you're also not playing with real money.
Well, it depends on your household.
That's very true. That's very, very true. I mean, so we're open to adding disclaimer, that we're not endorsed by the state of Florida. We don't want to include the word gambling in it whatsoever.
Okay.
And we can probably reinforce and say that the winnings are based on the skill and knowledge
Yes.
of player. Would you like that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. So that's disclaimer. we've covered definitions, advertising, what other talking points does the state have?
I actually think that this is a good stopping point for tonight, and then we can revisit this tomorrow to further discussion about making the perfect bill. Is that okay with you folks?
Yeah, we got a lot of things accomplished tonight.
Mhm.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you.